Lists are in, pairings are locked, and we are less than a month away from the World Team Championships. The first massive 18-team international event, 8 players on each team. It's going to be huge, and I thought it was going to be a good time to have a look at the lists, see what people are bringing, break it down, not necessarily go super into detail on each, list. Would be here forever. There's 180 odd lists or something like that. However maths works, 140 I think. So instead of doing that, I've brought up some interesting statistics for each faction, and then I'm going to give you one of the lists from each faction in attendance. It's not necessarily the best list, it's not necessarily my favourite list, but it might be one that I pick because it's really representative of the faction, or it's got some fun stuff in there that I think is worth talking about. This video is brought to you by the TSN Arena, the #1 place to go for Old World and Age of Sigmar tournaments here in Nottingham. Rob runs a wide range of events, from 500 point forays all the way up to 2,600 point mega battles, where single models like dragons have a less pronounced effect on the game and you see bigger bricks of infantry. Of course, there's still the normal 2,000 point battles, but even in there's some room for experimentation, with fan favourite events like the river battles going incredibly quickly. The TSN Arena is located on the outskirts of Nottingham City Centre near the Motorpoint Arena, and it is conveniently located in the middle of plenty of parking spots within walking distance of multiple hotels and 2 great places to go for food, including Snenton Market, which has a wide range of options. So, if you're interested in going to a venue where there's plenty of table space, the comfiest chairs that I've been in at any venue, and free drinks all weekend, go to www.tsnarena.com to buy your tickets today. Link in the description. First up, what is the army distribution? Well, you can see here there are some armies that have got bigger slices of the pie and some that have smaller slices. In terms of who is the largest piece of the puzzle, it's obviously Cathay. There are 18 teams in attendance, and all 18 teams have brought Cathay. It's the only faction that has one of every team in attendance having Cathay, so probably not surprising to anyone. Next up, we've got Tomb Kings with 17 out of 18, and then it drops down a little bit more. Vampire counts, I think, is only 15 out of the full 18, and it drops down. Bretonians are down to 14 out of the 18, same with the Dwarves, and so on and so forth, until we get down to the bottom end. So I've pulled stats for everything down up until Empire of Man, which is, there's 10 out of 18 teams bringing Empire, so I think there's some interesting things that we can look at there. When we get down to Skaven, Chaos Dwarf, Demons, and Wood Elves, there are so few lists that instead of specifically going like, oh, well, there's 2 Iron Demons, or something along those lines, we're going to instead look at individual lists and talk about what makes them good, why they're, potentially in here. I'll also try and give a rough idea of, as it comes up, which sort of role I see this faction taking in the meta, which, if you haven't done teams, obviously you've got attacking armies and defending armies. Attacking armies are the ones that are going to try and squeeze as many points out of the opponent as possible. Defending armies are the ones that are trying to blunt the attacking armies. You're probably going to lose with a defending army, so a good example of this would be like a traditional dwarf list, where you just take big bricks of infantry that are very hard to kill. And you're going to lose every game, but hopefully you only give up 500-600 points more than your opponent. So you're trying to lose as gracefully as possible with those sorts of lists. That's a real oversimplification for teams, but it's the general premise. Let's get into it. So what does the overall makeup look like? Obviously, we had a quick look at the pie chart there, and there are 14 factions in attendance out of the possible 17. So which ones didn't make the cut? There's 3 not included. Dark Elves, which, not surprising, but I think they do Double Dragon pretty well, and I'm a little surprised to see so many High Elf Double Dragon lists without people potentially digging into High Elves. I'm not surprised. I think that High Elves maybe do it better than Dark Elves. However, a little bit of a surprise not to see any of them at all. Ogre Kingdoms, this one I'm not really surprised. You can make a pretty decent anti-undead or points denial list, but I don't think it's... If you're bringing a list specifically to tech for a certain piece of the meta, you have to be very confident in your ability to pair into the right armies. The pairings is a little bit of a mini game between the 2 captains as it is. You're going to try and get your good stuff into their bad stuff and vice versa. So it's very hard to get hard counter armies in. And when ogres only really do well into undead, for example, maybe not the direction that I'd go in. Finally, Lizardmen. Lizardmen, not super surprising. They did suffer from the 1.5 changes, but I will say all 3 of these are armies that I have vaguely looked at. I know there was a lot of chat internally about whether Dark Elves or Lizardmen were worth looking at for Team England. So not surprised to see these missing, but it is interesting that out of all of the armies, out of all the teams, sorry, there are 3 armies that didn't make the cut at all. Now, the real question that everyone wants to know, dragons. Are dragons dead? Or are they still here? Well, there's 51 dragons. There's actually 56, because I forgot to include warp fire dragons in this. So 56 dragons across 27 lists, which is pretty impressive. And that is 4 lists with triple dragon, 16 with double dragons, and then 7 with single dragons. This is, yeah, it's a lot of dragons. And you're going to see them pretty heavily split between a couple of factions. I'll let you guess which ones they are. Pause. High Elves and Warriors of Chaos. Those are the 2 armies that you'll see the most dragons from. But there are a few factions here that do bring dragons, including Cathay. So let's have a look at what the points disparity looks like between the armies. Now, I think this is quite interesting. This is data that I should thank Ed from my Discord for. He has pulled together a lot of the stats that I've been looking at. So if any of this is wrong, blame him, but much appreciated, because I can show things like this. So at the top end, you can see here that the most expensive model is, I think it's dead on 500 points for America. It's either dead on 500 or 499 off the top of my head. And it goes across, and most teams have some sort of very expensive, usually dragon. But then you get down to Germany, who have done things very differently, and they haven't gone for any super expensive single models at all, which is a very different style of play. So at one end, we've got America that have gone very full send, very aggressive, very big on the ridden monsters and the pressure. And then you've got Germany that has gone none of that, basically, and more tied to scoring, smaller models, but then they do have quite big units, as we'll see in a couple of slides. Moving on to the average point per model, again, you can really start to see the disparity here between America and Germany. America, about 135, 140-ish points for the most, the average point per model. Given that infantry models can cost as low as 4 points in this game, I think that's pretty impressive that they've managed to get their average, over 100 points, so high up there. It goes down, you can see Denmark, Italy, Switzerland all got quite high points costs. England is surprisingly low near the bottom. We do value our quantity over quality in some respects. And then Germany down at the bottom here, really playing the scoring game, which is going to be interesting to see how that matches up at WTC at the end of September. Finally, we've got the biggest unit. Now, who is bringing the biggest unit? And this is the number of models in each unit. And it's us. We are go big or go home. But going back to what I was saying about Germany, they're up there. They've got the second biggest unit. They've got some really big Death Stars as well. Belgium also doing some quite big units. Italy doing a pretty big unit there, above 50 models. But most players looking, or most armies looking like they're going to bring something that's at least 30 models, with sort of Finland being the real exception there. I think Finland is the only one that's under 30 off the top of my head. So big swings there in terms of the size of units that you're expecting to see. Starting with the most popular, this is probably not going to surprise anyone. Obviously, we've talked about Cathay being in every army or every team already. 18 out of 18 teams bringing Cathay. Not surprising at all. What is surprising, that only 17 of the teams have double balloons. One team does not have any balloons at all, and I think that's a fun one to look at, because if you want to see how these lists work, you can just go to New Recruit, and in the tournament section, you'll find the link to the event. I tell you what I'll do is I'll put it in the notes, the description of this video as well, so it's easy for you to find and dig into the lists if you want a little bit more granularity. But yeah, one absolute hero team has decided we're going to bring Cathay, but not bring any balloons, which is it's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully they do well with that. Just, always cheer for an underdog. There's 5 Sky Lanterns that aren't ridden by characters, which is pretty wild, I think. I thought everyone would have settled on characters being the best way to do the Sky Lanterns, but it does open up the possibility of spending more points on non-character lanterns. So you can put in a couple of Shigengan Lords and, a character lantern, and then a lantern in your rare slots as well. It does raise the number of drops in your army, though. One of the big strengths of Cathay is if you go double character balloons, you then go some other character, whether Mao Ying or a couple of Shigengan generals, 1 unit of warriors, 2 units of Jade Lancers, both with ambush, and then just the cannons. You've got a 3-drop list. You can very consistently get that +1 to go first, which when you're an aggressive gun line, really strong, really difficult to deal with. So I think putting Sky Lanterns outside of the character slot is, as I see it, a mistake, but maybe that's something that I am not respecting enough, and it'll be interesting to see whether those teams do well, or whether they just, 4 drops, 3 drops, fundamentally the same as long as you're not going into a Cathay mirror match. So maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I'm overestimating the value of the 3-drop list. 20 of the balloons were strategists. So that's the hero level character up to 50 points worth of magic items. And then we had 9 magistrates as well. It's a little bit of a juggling act in terms of trying to write a list. And something that I should mention here for Cathay is that all balloons, or Cathay is limited to only 2 balloons, whether they're characters, whether they are non-characters as well. So each team can bring a maximum of double balloon, which is why there's 17 here with 2 balloons and 1 team without. Which is why I think putting all of your eggs into the character balloon strategy is so good, because you've got to focus your points into them. They're points denial in that they're very hard to kill, and also they are, you've got to make sure that they stay alive as long as possible to get as much value out of them. 49 grand cannons. Now, if you can do maths, that is not the full number of cannons that you can bring. Some teams aren't bringing 3 cannons. I think, again, I would just be bringing 3 cannons with triple ogre loader if you can. Maybe you skimp points and you shave one of the ogre loaders for this, but 49 grand cannons, still a pretty good amount of cannons. 3 Mao Yings. Now, this is surprising. England is playing with Mao Ying, as are a couple of other countries, and I had thought that this was going to be more popular. Basically, the decision comes down to, most of the time, whether you want to run Mao Ying or you want to run 2 to 3 Shigengan generals, bare bones or with some upgrades. And I really like Mao Ying. I think it's a good build in terms of how many, you've got some flexibility. It's points denial. She's very hard to kill because if she dies in dragon form, she comes back and then, in human form, and you have to kill her again. She's got strikes first attacks with strength 7, AP2, armor bane 1. She's got a lot of spells she knows. She's a flexible caster. I think she's a really solid pick, and I'm surprised that only, 1/6 of the teams picked her. But there are a lot of Shigengan generals which are quite easy to use, and maybe there's something to do with the model availability there as well. Obviously, Mao Ying was she out this weekend? Either not out or very recently out. So maybe some teams who were worried about access to it and don't 3D print, maybe that was a decision part there. 2 Sentinels. Fun. I actually think I wouldn't have been surprised to see more Sentinels, where instead of going heavy on the Shigengan generals, you go for a couple of Jade Sentinels. Yes, it does boost your number of drops, but having some bound spell level 3s, it feels fine. I don't think it's necessarily the most competitive way to play Cathay, but I'm surprised that the only team that actually brought Sentinels was the team that didn't bring any balloons. So, in fact, let's have a look at this right now. First list I want to look at for Cathay is the one that isn't bringing balloons, and I think that's just a lot of fun. So what we've got here is we've got double cannon, so there's still a good number of cannons in the list. We've got double Cathayan Sentinel, 1 granite, which is immune to multiple wounds and also has a slightly better armor save, getting up to, I think, a 4 up armor save. Then we've got one which is a Jade Sentinel. You can pick 1 spell from either battle magic or from elementalism, and cast that at bound spell level 3, which is obviously really good. And then we've got a couple of units of Lancers, 2 Lancers, both drilled, 1 with a Maw Shard, giving a miscast aura, so any enemy wizards in range will miscast on any double instead of just double 1. And we've gone really aggressive. We've got double Shigengan Lord here, which I think is fun. So 1 with Alchemist Mask, which is there to Plague of Rust your opponent, lower their armor save so the Lancers actually have a bit more punch, but then can also back them up with the Law of Yin as well, the signature spells they have, and being a high magic wizard as well, which is fun. And then we've got a second one, which is Law of Yang, Illusion, Jade Blade of the Great Fleet, which is +2 strength, AP -2 regen as well, and I've learned Feng Shi Bow, which is -1 to be hit in combat, comboed with Illusion, hoping to roll, so a little bit risky, but hoping to roll into Spectral Doppelganger, but otherwise being able to be -2 to be hit in combat, having that, 7 wounds, 3 up armor save, 5 up ward, 5 up regen, -2 to be hit. just a really strong offensive or defensive character, I should say, in combat there. So quite like that combo. And yeah, Hungary has brought some really fun lists. I do like the things they're doing. And again, given that they're the only ones that aren't bringing the balloons, really hope that this list does well. Love to see an underdog pulling through. So fun one here. Let's look at the next one. Second up, we have got Tomb Kings, and we've gone for 17 out of the 18 teams here, so almost everyone has agreed that yes, Dry Undead, one of the best things that you can do. 12 of those are Mortuary Cult, which means that there's 4 Grand Army and 1 Royal Host. The way that the data is structured is, in the new recruit extract, is it doesn't actually give you the name of the detachment it's in, so I've had to manually go through and double check. If there are any inconsistencies here, my apologies, but I'm pretty confident that I've got everything right. So just a preemptive apology if I do miss one and someone calls me out in the comments. So yeah, 12 Mortuary Cult. Mortuary Cult, one of the best answers you can bring to Cathay. Oh, didn't talk about it. Cathay is, you know, it's a pressure army. You're going to put a lot of pressure on your opponent. You're going to try and table them. You're going to score a lot of points. You're not necessarily worrying about your you know, strategic locations too much. It'll be nice to get, but domination, you're very strong. Anything end of game scoring, you're very strong, because this is an army that can table your opponent very comfortably. Mortuary Cult, this is a really good counter to Cathay. It's not great into some armies, but it kills Cathay pretty well. It deals with dragon armies pretty well. Anything that's got high value models that are sort of 2 to 3 wounds, or you know, have poor, well, high value, low defense, I guess. So Pegasus Knights is basically what I'm getting at here. Exiles. Mortuary Cult love to see an Exiles list. I'm speaking from experience on the Exile side of things. Not a fun place to be when all of their Ushabti always hit on 4s, wound on 2s, and you don't get a ward save because you're Exiles. So you can just get popped at one Pegasus Knight per model. For Grand Army, we're seeing some double Dragon, double Necrosphinx lists. These are good. This is still like a good pressure list. America, obviously Phil Carl has the list that he's been playing basically unchanged, or not entirely unchanged. I think there's been some tweaks, but for a year and a half, that style of list is still out there and kicking. And then England has got a Royal Host list as well, which is very exciting. Huge numbers of bodies, and it's the only list that you can bring that still is able to shoot lots of shots at dragons, because you can always volley fire with the Royal Host infantry cohorts, I think they're called. The mixed skeleton archers and skeleton spearmen at the front. Not saying it's necessarily there to deal with dragons, now that poison is worse and harder to get access to, and you can't take single big bricks, you know. But it is nice to be able to move around those big bricks of infantry and still shoot with them, so some value to be had there, and something that we definitely kept secret in the run-up to the WTC list reveals. 9 Bone Dragons. This is fun. I think we can all agree that Bone Dragons are not the best dragons. However, in this meta, I quite like a Bone Dragon. They're -1 to be shot, so we've moved a little bit away from melee being the best thing you can do, and maybe guns are the best thing that you can do now. There's a lot of ballistic skill shooting with Dwarf Expeditionary Force, Nuln Empire, Cathay, all Cathay. You know, we're seeing a lot of ballistic skill shooting, and having a dragon that's inherently -1 to be hit is quite nice. On top of that, you can bring, you know, potentially a High Priest on there with Illusion, cast Glittering Robes. Quite a nice counter. You can just go, okay, one dragon's got Armor of Ages, so good luck ever killing it with, you know, volume shooting. The other one has -2 to be shot because of Glittering Robes and the Bone Dragon's inherent -1 to be hit at range. That just feels like a pretty strong combo. So do quite like a Bone Dragon, even though they are horrendous to move around. They're on a huge base, the 100 by 150 mils. 25 Tomb Scorpions. This is one of the most ubiquitous... I forgot how to do words. One of the most ubiquitous units that you will see. Obviously, Mortuary Cult have to take them. So I think off the top of my head, all of the Tomb Scorpions there are in Mortuary Cult. There are 11 armies that have 2, which is the amount you legally have to take to make the list. And then there's 1 army with 3. Tomb Scorpions, they're fantastic. 70 points, or you probably give them ambush to keep your drops low. 75 points. Just great value. Potentially can even kill dragons, but don't rely on it. Just a nice little cheap piece to go and harass and, potentially get in the back lines and kill artillery, which there is a lot of now. 22 units of a Shabti. Now, you'll notice there are 12 mortuary cult lists. There's only 22 units of a Shabti. That means that not every mortuary cult list is taking multiple units of a Shabti. I'd have to double check this one, and I probably should know this, but off the top of my head, I think there are 3 or 4 armies that have 3 units of a Shabti, so 1 in core and then 2 in special. There's a chunk of them that have 2 units. There's some armies that have 1, and then there's 1 Grand Army that has a single unit of a Shabti as well, which is not what I expected. But honestly, it's not bad. Like, they're still good outside of Mortuary Cult. If you are worried about, maybe you need to tech into beating some of the lists that might cause you issues, Bretonians might be pretty okay into Grand Army Tomb Kings. Putting 5 Shabti in there to help shore up that matchup doesn't feel like the worst idea in the world. 17 Caskets of Souls? Hell yeah. It's not 1 per army. There are some armies that have gone double Necrosphinx, so you can't fit them in. But almost every army has 1 Casket of Souls, and a couple of armies have 2. I think there's 2 armies that have gone full on the leadership debuffing, where you go Necromancy, you go doubles, catapults with these Skulls of the Fallen, Skulls of the Foe, something along those lines. And you just do the leadership debombing, and you try and hit them with Light of Death, and scream them to death alongside the rest of your shooting. But, yeah. Casket of Souls, expected to see them, plenty of them. Finally, there's 5 units of Carrion. I love these things. This is a tech piece that I'm a little surprised that more people haven't put in. It's just a really cheap, monstrous infantry that flies around, and, 2 of them is unit strength 6. You can go and deal with baggage trains. You can just be a pain in the backside. Just a really nice, cheap little unit that's also pretty self-reliant. Undead can't march in general unless they fly for Tomb Kings. So because you can fly, great. You don't have to worry about marching. So, same for Vampire Counts, but Carrion can just go off and do their own thing, which I think is valuable. For Mortuary Cult, I want to look at Bryn's list. Now, Bryn, for Team Wales, has been playing Ushabti for a long time. At the LGT last year, almost 12 months ago, he was playing, I think it was 18 Ushabti. So he's been playing the Ushabti spam list for a long time. He has a YouTube channel where he talks specifically about Tomb Kings as well. So this is what I would say I'm looking at and going, this is what I think is going to be the default list for Mortuary Cult. It's got everything you'd expect. 1 Casket of Souls in there to give you a ward save and the minus to be hit. Getting, layering that durability on top of your already good, defensive stats. You've got 1 unit of a Shabti in core with bows, 2 in special with great bows as well. All of them with an ancient, so they've got some protection against dragons or similar. I think that's really good. A couple of ambushes, Tomb Scorpion ambushes there, and then heavy on the skeleton skirmishers. Really like this. One of them is ambush to keep your drops a little bit low if needs be, but also just great places to put your high priest characters in there as well. So really like these as choices. Also having the illusion caster with Lore Familiar, so you can play that defensive style. You can miasmic mirage whatever's coming in to try and eat you. You can put down that column of crystal. You can do whatever you need. If you're playing into a shooting matchup, you can go with glittering robes. So your unit of skirmishes that you're in is -2 to be shot, or -3 if you're touching the correct bit of terrain or you're partially obscured. So really nice choices there. And this is sort of like, if you're looking to run Mortuary Cult, this is where I would recommend you start. Surprising no one, Vampire Counts are one of the most popular factions. The 3rd most likely, coming in just behind the Dry Undead. We've got 15 out of 18 teams are playing them. That is over 2/3 of all of the legacy lists. Off the top of my head, I think there are 23 legacy lists in total. And 15 of them are Vampire Counts. Not surprising, they are one of the best armies in the game. There's also 16 Mortis engines, which I think is very interesting. And out of those 16 Mortis engines, 5 of them are generals. Now, this is something that Vampire Counts players have moved away from quite a lot. We're in a more of a shooting meta, so you might worry that your general's going to get cannoned out or just shot to death by, huge numbers of outriders or similar. So a lot of people have decided to take a Mortis engine, but make it their 2nd wizard. Maybe it's only a level 2 wizard or a level 1 wizard that's on the Mortis engine, and then they've got their level 3 or level 4 general on foot. But there is a reason for this as well. 2 of those generals have lists that are double Mortis Engine. So no matter which Necromancer they made their general, it was always going to be the general that. Sorry, I've just realised it has to be a level 3 wizard minimum to be a general because of the leadership issues. But yes, any list that has 2 Necromancers, only one of them on a Mortis Engine, typically going to see them running with the general being the one on foot, so it's harder to interact with. There are 31 zombie units out of 15, and I'm pretty sure that means that all of the armies have at least 2 zombies, and then one army has 3. I didn't double check that, but I'm so confident that I'm just going to say that that's true, and if I'm wrong, please do correct me down in the comments. 28 Banshees. So there are a maximum of 2 Banshees per list. Your cap is you can take 1 per 1,000 points. In this list, there's 15 teams that are taking it, 28 Banshees. That means that 2 lists are running single Banshees. That's a lot of Banshees. They're running almost at the max. That is the equivalent of Cathay, basically. There's 2 less than the cap across all of the teams in terms of who can bring, the most Banshees there. 7 lists as well are running Hex Wraiths. Now, the build path for Vampire Counts is pretty solved at this point, and you go either double Graveguard, Blood Knights, or you go Hex Wraiths. That's the sort of standard way to build, and then you can play around with the characters a little bit, but you'll have the Graveguard in core, you'll have the, couple of units of zombies, all of the usual stuff there. Really interestingly, not on here, one person isn't running any Graveguard at all, which is wild. They're just running zombies and also Crypt Ghouls, Crypt Ghasts. The core infantry, Crypt Ghouls, I think they're called, which is, I really like Crypt Ghouls, but Graveguard are super efficient, so I'm curious to see how that list plays out, and hopefully it does well, and we can see maybe some streamed games of it. I think there has been talk about potentially being stream coverage of it. I'm not doing it, but I'm hoping someone else is. Moving on to Vampire Counts. What do I like most about Vampire Counts? I quite like this list. Germany, again, hasn't gone really expensive, so they've kept things cheap. They haven't gone for the Mortis Engine, which I think is a really interesting decision. They've got 2 Ken Wraiths in there, which, they're like Banshees, but they don't scream, which means that people don't typically run them. But it is a cheap ethereal threat that causes terror. You can do some real tricky stuff with that. I really like it. There are 3 wizards in here, a level 4, a level 3, a level 2. There's a lot of rezzing potential in the list. Because he hasn't gone for a Mortis Engine, he's got more points to put into, a 3rd wizard, the 2 Ken Wraiths as well. He's got the standard White Lord in there with the standard of Hellish Vigor. He's got the Helm of Commandment, so that the Graveguard are going to have a better weapon skill. They're, equipped with a great weapon as is typical. They've got some magic resist. They've got the Drakenhof banner for the regen there. A lot of the standard choices, couple of unit zombies, and then 2 Blood Knights as well. Now, theoretically, Blood Knights are harder to keep alive, but in this list, you've got double Necromancy and a Dark Magic Caster with Lore Familiar. This unit is going to absolutely slap because you're going to cast Battle Lust on it, and you're going to get up to 3 attacks with the Blood Knights with their lances, 2 attacks with the steeds as well, and those steeds are strength 4, so you're getting a good amount of output from the list, and I just think it's fun. I do think the heavy on ethereal list style that we're playing, obviously Charlie's incredible with the Vampire Counts, has a great list with the Hex Wraiths. I think that's probably better, but I like the choices that are in here, and I think this is going to do really well, and I think it takes into playing against certain lists better. Like, the amount of output you've got here, this is, in my mind, a list that will smash Death Stars. If you're trying to outlast your opponent, do not be paired into this list. Those Blood Knights are going to make an absolute mess of whatever they touch. 4th, we've got Dwarves, and this one might surprise some people who weren't necessarily keyed into the international meta coming up. And that's because Dwarves at tournaments that you might have gone to or seen in your local playgroup, typically slower, might have some shooting, not the best lists. Dwarves internationally, that's Expeditionary Force. That is the thing that you're expecting to see. So there are 14 out of 18 teams that brought Dwarves. 12 of them have brought Expeditionary Force, and they are going whole hog on the Copters. They also have 13 out of 14 of them have a Thane with the Rune of Bursting Flame, Rune of Accuracy, Rune of Rapid Fire combination. If you haven't come up against this joyous model as an opponent, let me explain it to you. Basically, your ballistic skill 4 as a Thane, so you always hit on 3s. You get 2 shots from the Rune of Rapid Fire. You always hit on ballistic skill from Rune of Accuracy, and every hit turns into 2d3 hits from the Rune of Bursting Flame. It's a very, very strong combination, and probably the thing that boosts dwarf win rates the most across all factions. All of the expeditionary forces have it. The one list that doesn't is quite a sort of turtle, just defensive list as far as I can tell. So I guess that's probably not too surprising, but I probably would have still just put it in there and try to pick off skirmishes, squeeze some points out of my opponent, however I wanted to play that one. Now, we're playing Expeditionary Force. How many copters are we talking? Well, before we get to that, 6 Burlock Davinsons. That's half the Expeditionary Force list. Now, we didn't take it for England. It's a very good piece, but I don't think it's necessary. The way that he works is it makes any unit that he's joined ignore ballistic skill modifiers for long range. So the way that he's typically run is you take him with a unit of rangers, you put him in the rangers, and he also has a second rule that gives reroll 1s to a unit of thunderers and I think quarrelers as well, but you can't take those in Expeditionary Force. So you'll take a unit of rangers to put him in, they'll shoot without long range penalty, and then it'll also provide reroll 1s to the thunderers, who are just less good overall, but it's nice to have that efficiency boost as well. Nice piece. Not surprised to see him about half the time. I think that feels about correct, to be honest. Now, we're talking copters. How many copters are we talking? This is not how many copters there are. This is how many gyrocopter units there are. And there are 34 of them. That is a lot. Now, that is, I think, and I could be wrong, I think it's 13 lists have gyrocopters in. One of the, non-expeditionary force lists does have gyrocopters as well. And we've also got 29 scout copter units as well, which is wild. There are so many gyrocopters here. I think there's also 1 gyro bomber, something like that. I didn't even double check. It's not a great model. It's not, it's a monstrous creature, which is a weird interaction. So you haven't got 360 line of sight. It's a lot more slow. You've got a wheel, yada yada. But yes, if you want to go whole hog on it, you can put the gyro bombers in as well. 25 cannons. Now this is interesting because this is an adaptation that we've seen, as we're leaning more towards the shooting style of things. We're seeing more war machines, but different war machines. In the first sort of 6 to 8 months of Old World being released, I saw a lot of the stone throwers, the grudge throwers, which I thought were fine, but not super exciting. The accuracy of a cannon is just so good, even though the output of the cannon is worse than the actual stone thrower. And now that you've got big units that the grudge thrower might do stuff into with the blast template, still seeing a lot more cannons than stone throwers. We're also seeing 3 lists with organ guns, which is a total of 7 organ guns. Must be 4. We're seeing 7 organ guns across 3 to 4 lists. Apologies for that. My brain may have broken when I made this. But yeah, not very many organ guns in comparison. I really like the organ guns. They are just more firepower when you're going quite heavy with the gyrocopter units. And in Expeditionary Force, you also get to move them. They are less tough, but having a mobile shooting unit, it's not that mobile, but mobile-ish shooting unit, I think is very solid to have. For Dwarves, which list have I picked? Well, I haven't picked Richie's list, and the reason for that is I'm going to try, and I might not stick to it, but I'm going to try and pick lists from different countries, and I have one in mind that I really want to talk about for England already. So what is the list that I'm looking at? It is Spain's list, and it is as much copter and bomber as you can fit in. Now, I did say previously I don't really rate the gyro bombers, but this is full flying pressure. 2 units of scout copters in core, 3 units of regular copters in special, and then 2 gyro bombers as well. So much output there. We've got triple cannon. All of them are magical, so able to deal with ethereal. Just this is a Swiss Army knife, but the Army knife is a hammer, and the ranged output is the answer to every problem. We've still got all of the things that you like to see in here. We've got a Thane, and in this case, we've gone for the crossbow, so we've got extra range. Being able to pick off those skirmishing units that are 30 inches away from that, I think is really strong. We've got Burlock Daminson, we've got them paired with some Thunderers, and we've still got a combat res brick with the Dwarf Warriors, Master Rune of Hesitation, with the standard and the veteran and the drills and everything else on there. So really like this list. I think this is a lot of pressure, and as someone who's recently swapped to Bretonians, would be an absolute nightmare for me to play against if I came up against it in a tournament. Next up on the docket, tied at 14th with Dwarves, is Bretonnia. Now, Bretonnia is in most of the armies, and we've seen 5 Exiles, 6 Grand Army, and 3 Errantry Crusade, which I think is a really interesting spread. And I think it's the most even spread across all of the armies that are taking, all of the armies of infamy and the Grand Army as well. So it's good to see that we actually do have a full spread of, armies there. 2 of the armies have a hippogriff, which I think is very fun. I do like the hippogriff. It's not something that typically makes it into my list, but I can see why you'd go for it. You can go tankier with it. You can use it as a, it's been paired. I think both lists have paired it with the vow that make it unbreakable. So it's more of a hold in place piece as opposed to I'm looking for something to go in and do as much damage as possible, which is typically what Bretonnia looks for in its characters. There are only 2 Green Knights. Now, I should say as well, Green Knight at the WTC cannot charge the turn it comes in. That has been nerfed, FAQ'd, however you want to call it. Yeah, not 100% sure why they went with that, but it is what it is, and that is what we've got. 3 Lady Elises. I've been vocal about how I think Lady Elise is fine, but doesn't really fit into lists. That's because I've mostly been writing Exiles lists, and I have seen some people fit her into the Grand Army or Errantry Crusade here. No, that's fine. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how those lists perform over the course of the weekend. Because even though it's going to be small sample size, it will be interesting to see how they perform into certain matchups. So this should be a fun one to keep our eye on. Now, how many Pegasus Knights? 20 units, which is across 14 teams, which means there's one army with 3 units of Pegasus Knights, and then the rest are either 2 or 1. Exiles typically go for 1 big unit. Grand Army quite often goes for a bigger and a smaller unit, a 4 and a 3, something along those lines, and we see that represented here pretty well as well. And finally, 11 Syrian's Lockets. Syrian's Locket is an item that you can only put on your cavalry or infantry models, so you can't put it on a hippogriff, but it does make you immune to multiple wounds, which is really, really important. We are in a shooting meta. I think we're going to see a lot of multi-wound ranged weapons. If you're playing Bretonians and you don't have Syrian's Locket, I'd be a tad worried that you're going to take some cannonballs to the face and find your very expensive, very killy character suddenly very dead. Especially when they're going to be hiding inside units of Pegasus Knights. If it's a unit of 5, it only needs to take 1 casualty before you can then, potentially get splattered by a cannonball. So 11 Syrian's Lockets, I think those teams are going to have more success with their Bretonians in general. For Bretonians, I want to talk about Denmark, and that's because they're one of the armies, or one of the teams, I should say, that are bringing Errantry Crusade. We all know what a good Bretonian Exiles list looks like. We probably know what a good Grand Army list looks like. Errantry Crusade? That's pretty fresh and new. Not a lot of people playing that in comparison to the other ways that things can be played. So what do we got? Well, we're starting off with both of the special characters. That's the main reason I picked this one. I looked at it and went, wow, this is someone who knows what they want. So they've gone for Elise for the really strong Dispel threat ability. You can also pick 2 of the, ladies... not Lady's Gift, the Lore of the Lady spells, so you can give regen, and then you can also get either the Line Magic Missile, or more likely, you're going to be buffing your knights with +1 to your strength and AP. Really strong there, can go with the Knights Errant, make that into a bit of a death style that does something. Green Knight, even though it's nerfed at WTC, still very good. We've got a Heroism Duke. If you're only going to take 1 character, this is probably the way to go, although the Barded Pegasus is very interesting. Given that they've gone for the full, defensive loadout, Syrian's Locket to ignore multi-wounds, Grummel Great Helm to get to a 2-up save rerolling 1s, Healing Potion to potentially heal some wounds, Virtue of Heroism obviously for the, going out there to just try and kill monsters or expensive characters. I guess the reason that they've gone for a Barded Pegasus is so they can fit the BSB in here as well. I think I'd have preferred just going for the Royal Pegasus, but that's the fun thing about looking at other people's lists. They'll make decisions that you won't necessarily make, and you can work out whether that's something that you want to put into your style of list building as well. We've got the Errantry banner here, so this Paladin who is going to go into probably the big units of Knight Errant, I would think, giving them +1 strength in the charge. Then we've got, the big unit here with the Banner Chalons. It's just a lot of pressure. You're going to go as much pressure as possible. couple of units of squires with scout, and then the ever-present unit of Pegasus Knights, which has got the banner of honourable warfare to be able to donate the rerolls to hit against anything with ranged weapons. Remember, I'm sure everyone knows this at this point, but in case you don't, dragons have a breath weapon. That's a ranged weapon, so if you charge your Duke in with the banner of honourable warfare, you do get rerolls to hit, which means you're a lot more likely to kill said dragon. We've talked about Bretonians, which is somewhat of a pressure list. You know, it's a little bit more flexible. You can dance around your opponent. It's a good answer in some ways to the pressure dragon lists. Now we've got Warriors of Chaos. Warriors of Chaos are pure pressure. They're going to put bodies on the table. They're going to run at you. They're going to do as much damage as possible. Try and table you. Get those high scoring points in the matchups that they can do well into. 13 of the 18 teams brought Warriors of Chaos. Not surprising, they're still a very good faction. One of the better dragon factions, especially now that you can take a dragon outside of your character slot, still have, multiple wizards. You can do a lot of stuff with Warriors of Chaos. 3 of those lists are Wolves of the Sea. For those of you who don't know, Wolves of the Sea has a mechanic where one of your champions, infantry or cavalry with a single wound, can challenge an enemy character, as in you declare a challenge, your opponent either accepts with one of their infantry characters or infantry cavalry characters that's got 1 wound, or they deny. If you win the challenge before the game starts, or if you your opponent refuses the challenge, you get to go first. It's just a guaranteed you go first. So it means you get to play more of an MSU. You can bring more units. You're not worried about how many drops you are. You can out-deploy your opponent so you know where all of their stuff's going and still be near guaranteed to get the first turn if you tech into that choice. Chaos Warriors with like halberds is a good choice to put in there. Get a lot of flexibility in terms of, you're going to win most matchups with that character. That does mean there are 10 grand army lists as well. And what does that look like in terms of on the tabletop? Well, we've got 22 factorial dragons. So 22 dragons, 5 of which are Warpfire dragons, 12 of which are Exalted Champions, and 5 of which are Chaos Lords. This is not surprising at all, actually. I'm a little surprised we're not seeing more Warpfire dragons, but we are seeing people lean towards the gigantic spawn, all of which are Nurgle. Definitely vindicated, because I've been saying since they came out for the last year that Nurgle is correct, and now all of the Khorne believers seem to have agreed with me and fallen in line. But going back to the dragons, the thing that you have the flexibility in terms of Warriors of Chaos is you can take either a Chaos Lord or Exalted Champion. You're still on the same dragon in terms of output, so you're still weapon skill 6, strength 7, d6 stomps, all of that good stuff. You just lose a point of toughness and a wound. So the Exalted Champions are T5 as opposed to T6, but the trade-off is they get a lot more points. The Chaos Lord is you're able to give them a great weapon. I think it's like a great weapon, 1 favor of the gods, and then a Mark of Nurgle, and that's kind of all of the upgrades you can go for. Exalted Champions, you can give them the Brazen Collar for Magic Resist 2. You can give them one of the regen items to get them a triple save. You can give them Favor of the Gods. You can give them Great Weapon. You can give them a Mark of Nurgle as well. You can fit all of that in quite easily, and that's reflected here where we can see that more players are going for Exalted Champions. A lot of the time when you see a Chaos Lord, that Chaos Lord on Dragon is backed up by an Exalted Champion on Dragon, and then often backed up by a Warpfire Dragon. So it's just going, I'm going to get as much dragon in there as possible, which I think is really interesting. Wolves of the Sea obviously can't take double Exalted Champion there off the top of my head. So dragons, lots of dragons. This is where the bulk of the dragons are going to be. There's, either backed up by a lot of infantry. There's some Forsaken in there, but it's mostly like Chaos Knights or Marauder Horsemen, that sort of backup there. A lot of pressure. This is an army that's going to be full sending across the table. Now, here's the really fun bit, something that I really like. 2 armies have got the Shaggoths with the Chalice of Dark Rain. This is an incredible item. It turns off War Machine shooting, and it halves the range of ballistic skill shooting for a turn. Unbelievably good. If you're trying to deal with gunline armies, just bringing this, because the way that it works, for anyone who doesn't know, Shaggoths are in the Beastmen book, so they get their items from the Beastmen magic items section, even though there are Warriors of Chaos list, and we're taking them here. Being able to take that Chalice of Dark Rain, which is a tech piece 2 armies have done, it opens up the matchups that the Warriors of Chaos can go into, and I think that's really fun. I think that's really exciting, and I'm looking forward to seeing how those 2 teams actually use the Shaggoths in the pairings. Do they try and go into Nuln? Do they try and go into, you know, the Cathay list? Is that what they think is going to be the big counter for Cathay? For Warriors of Chaos, let's look at a triple dragon list. And this is the sort of way that I'd build my triple dragon list. I'd probably tweak the core a little bit, but we've got double Exalted Champion, both of them Mark of Nurgle, both of them with a Favour of the Gods to get one of those rerolls on the Gaze of the Gods table, meaning that you're safer, you're not, you know, you're less likely to get Stupidity. Both of them have got Brazen Collar for that Magic Resist 2. You've got a Warpfire Dragon, already Magic Resist 2. So you've got triple dragon, all with Magic Resist. Great stuff. Talisman of the Carrion Crow, Crown of the Everlasting Conquest. Both of those give a 5-up regen, so you've got both dragons, very tanky. Only toughness 5, but with triple save. 4-up armor save, 5-up ward, 5-up regen. He has gone for shield on them, which is unnecessary, but, you know, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. Warpfire Dragons here. Battle Magic level 1. This gives you a wizard that you can actually have some dispel threat from. It's got magical attacks. All of your key stuff here has magical attacks. Yes, the Warhounds don't and the Marauder Horsemen, but this is something that can go into Ethereal very comfortably. Lots of output. Warpfire Dragon. It's a dragon that can't be shut down by challenges. Love that. It is squishy in comparison to a normal dragon, but I'm a big fan of it. Then in core, we've got 2 units of Chaos Knights with Brazen Collar, Undivided. Love that. I'd gone a little bit bigger, but, you know, it's just as much pressure as possible. And then he's got 3 units of Warhounds, 2 units of Marauder Horsemen, Mark of Cornflail. This is just pressure, pressure, pressure that wants to get up against, you know, anyone who's looking to win the game through magic missiles, through Miasmic Mirage. If you're looking to stop me from doing what I want to do by hexing me, you know, Miasmic Mirage and Column of Crystal, I've got 5 threats that want to touch you. What are you going to do about it? So yes, I really like this list. It's full violence, and this is, if piloted well, I think this can do a lot of damage, potentially score a lot of points if the pairings go in Norway's favour as well. Orcs and Goblins are coming in at 2/3 of the armies, which is, again, not surprising, very reliable. One of the armies that you can throw under the Cathay bus without losing too much. You've got some pressure in there. The Cathay players not super excited to play against it. They're all Grand Army, which I think is, again, not surprising. The best things in the book are the Night Goblins and the Doom Divers, and if you want to take those, well, you better be taking Grand Army. There are 13 wyverns, however you want to say it, across the board, which is quite a lot. They're very cheap. I do like a wyvern in terms of you're paying like 300, 350 points in that sort of realm. You can give them triple save. You can keep them cheap. You can pair them up. You can have 2 wyverns running around together. I think this is a fun way to get into the back lines, to have something dealing with the scoring that is out of reach of your war machines and fanatics. There is also, speaking of behemoths, one Ragnarok. One absolute hero is bringing in a Ragnarok. Shout out to Amy from Team Scotland, even though it does hurt me a little bit to see on the table. She's done very well with it, so I shouldn't mock. And I think it's fun to see alongside the other slightly surprising piece, given that there's no Troll Horde, one Troll Hag. So there's going to be some big beasties on the table. Orcs and Goblin players, I've noticed, are the most prone to wanting to put their big stuff on the table. I don't say that as a character flaw. I think that's fun. So, yeah, good variety in there. Most of the armies are looking the same, with some key differences in there as well. And we've got 91 Fanatics. So that's 31 units of Night Goblins and 91 Fanatics. Now, there could be 93 Fanatics, but one team brought 60 Fanatics, but instead of running 2 units of 30, went 35 and 25. So they limited themselves there. And I think there's one other team that, you know, took 1 less Fanatic than they could have done as well. But yeah, 91 Fanatics coming to a Mela near you. 22 Doom Divers as well. Again, there's 12 teams. That means there's a maximum of 24 Doom Divers that could possibly be there. There are 22. Not far off maximum, just one player didn't bring them. And 11 Rock Lobbers. Now, these aren't necessarily as good as Doom Divers, but if you've taken your 2 Doom Divers, why not just go and add some Rock Lobbers in there as well? There's also a lot of the Bolt Throwers, but Bolt Throwers not super exciting. I didn't tally those up. That's really just a case of, okay, I've got 4 war machines. I want to put more stuff in. What can I possibly do here? I guess we're looking at Bolt Throwers now. Finally, there is one Kicknick, which I'm a huge fan of, and I think it has a lot of play into the sorts of armies that we're going to see here, starting stuff off the board, having the +1 to bring them on from Kicknick is really good. Being able to charge war machines in the backlines is really nice as well. So I think I'm a little surprised that we don't see more Kicknick. I think this is a really solid unit to bring, and I hope to see it have success on the table. What has Poland got for us? Poland, typically a team that does well in international Warhammer, just across the sort of gamut of Warhammer games, so always interesting to have a look at what they're bringing, and this is the full violence that I'm expecting to see from them. They've got 3 units of Night Goblins with Fanatics. They have got as much artillery as you can fit in, double Lock Robber, double Doom Diver, triple Bolt Thrower. They've got some Squig herds in there as well for some random movers. There's a Wrangler Squig as well, and then a good chunk of Wizards. So you've got a Goblin here with Idol of Gork for the reroll to cast, and also increasing the range of their spells by 3. So this is a really good Itchy Nuisance caster. We've got a big boss here with the BSB Wallopers One Hit Wonder Armor of Mork, getting some magic resist into their unit. A couple more big bosses with Giant Cave Squigs, one with the Ruby Ring of Ruin, so just some, cheap threats that can either get into combat or do some shooting. And then we've got a couple of chariots. Now these are interesting, and this is the main reason that I picked the list. 2 Orc Big Boss chariots with no upgrades. I would have been tempted to give them heavy armor, shield, and troll hide trousers to give them a 3-up save against shooting. Now that would eat into the points, but I would drop the bolt throwers for that. So it's I'd be interested to see what the matchups they want to put it into in terms of not worrying about that. But at the face of it, it is still, toughness 5, a 4-up save, 6 wounds, I think, 4 from the chariot, 2 from the big boss. Great weapon. So it hits pretty hard. Yeah, I'm assuming probably something that's a little bit more defensive. You're just looking to keep all of your artillery alive, so you're using it as sort of frontlining pieces to countercharge if people go into the Night Goblins, something along those lines. But yeah, really interesting, and I think a fun list here. Lots of good stuff in, especially interesting those 2 chariots. I want to see more as see how they do on the table. I'll be keeping my eye on Poland's results for sure. Beastmen, another one of the armies that you can theoretically put in front of Cathay to some level of success, and we've got again 2/3 of the teams bringing Beastmen. 5 of them are Wild Herd, while 7 are Grand Army, which is a good spread, pretty even, almost 50-50. Wild Herd does have advantages in that you can cast your Vile Tides more frequently. Grand Army is just a little bit more consistent with the other threats you can bring. Being able to bring those Gigantic Spawn is obviously really nice. There's a 38 total Brave Shaman. Now, a few of those do have Lore Familiars, so it's not a full 38 Vile Tides. I think it is 31 Vile Tides, but just very, very high numbers of output there in terms of the Vile Tide meta that we're expecting to see. 10 of the 12 teams have the Chalice of Dark Rain. Again, as mentioned, it's such a good item that some Warriors of Chaos players have brought it on Shaggoths, but here we've got 10 of them. Again, if we're talking about Beastmen in terms of being able to deal with Cathay, this is one of the tools that you want to bring, and then pairing it up with Pelt of Midnight, making yourself -1 to be shot from ballistical shooting, just really doubling down on making it difficult for Cathay to deal with you, and also just being a difficult matchup for, Nuln, potentially for the Expeditionary Force lists as well. So really nice combination there for the 8 teams that took both of them and the 10 teams that took the Chalice as well. There are 12 Herdstones. This probably shouldn't surprise you. The Herdstone, one of the best units that you can bring for Beastmen, even though it's not a traditional unit, it's a bit of terrain. If you don't know what it does, it's a bit of terrain that you put down. Whoever controls it at the end of the game gets 200 points, so already this is something that's really strong if you want to play like a denial style. But on top of that, it gives you reroll 1s to wound in combat if you control it, magic resist to the unit that controls it specifically, +1 to all of your casting within 12 inches. I believe it's also -1 to enemy casting within 12 inches, but that's going to come up less frequently. Also, there's I think a leadership debuff for when your opponent has to take terror tests. There's a lot of stuff stacked on top of there for a frankly cheap piece of terrain that can't be interacted with other than being controlled. And yeah, I think the Herdstone, a big piece of why Beastmen are expected to do well on the international stage. 11 Gigantic Spawn. This is the same as Warriors of Chaos. Now, remember that there's only the Grand Army able to take them, the Wild Herd aren't. So out of a 14 maximum to be, that you could take, 11 being taken. Again, I think that feels pretty reasonable there. And there are 3 Doom Bulls. Now, unfortunately, if you go Wild Herd, you can't take a Doom Bull, and if you want to shave some points in the Grand Army, you might go for a Beast Lord instead of a Doom Bull, or just go full casters. but I point this one out because the Doombull's one of my favourite units in Beastmen. I just like that you can make something that is tough enough to punch a god on the chin and say, you know, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. I'm going to win. I'm going to take not many wounds, and you're going to lose to static combat res of the unit that I'm in. I really like that. For Finland, let's have a look here at Beastmen. Or sorry, for Beastmen, let's have a look at Finland. We've got a great list. This is 4 chances for Viletide, or, well, not 4 chances. You can just take Viletide 4 times, which is obviously very aggressive. We've got the Chalice of Dark Rain in here, which is something I value really highly, meaning that you're more likely to win those anti-shooting mech traps. You've got the Pelt of Midnight, so you can keep your, you know, most important brick, the Gore Herd here, you can keep them more safe against enemy shooting. You've got Kralmor, who has got, obviously, the lure of Primal Magic, so you can do, you've got Devolve from his little totem that you put down. You've got potentially a skill shot, magic missile. You've got some other fun stuff in there as well. You've got the reserve move spell that you can go with from Primal Magic if you roll it. Also, you've got Viletide access from Kralmor. You've got the level 1 Demonology caster with a Jagged Dagger, so you can sacrifice wounds to get more consistent casts. Obviously, there's Herdstone in there. A couple of Gigantic Spawn, some Ungor Herds with short bows, some Razor Gore just for pressure and for early drops. I really like this list. I think it's really, really solid. Has everything that I want to see in there. Pelt of the Dark Young, getting some mad resist into the unit. Just all round, I think this is a really solid list. And this is sort of, if you're looking for how to write a list for Beastmen, this is probably where I would look at starting if you want to go Grand Army. High Elves. Obviously, one of the factions I absolutely love. 11 out of 18 teams. At the lower end of the sort of mass taken lists, but still pretty consistent. 5 of those are Tracian Warhost. I think this is probably the way that I like High Elves the most. It's very defensive, but you can also go more pressure with Grand Army. That allows you to take Silver Helms, Dragon Princes, Lothan Skycutters, a lot of stuff that if you want to be aggressive with it, you can. Try and push for higher points out of your opponent. So not a bad thing to have there. Both have their strengths and weaknesses. 20 dragons across the 11 teams, which is almost the maximum. Most teams have got 2 dragons, and then there's 1 or 2 in there with, I think there's 2 lists with only a single dragon, taking us to the total of 20. And 19 of those are star dragons, but 1 is a moon dragon. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the moon dragon. I was talking before about how I do like the Chaos Exalted Champion, which is toughness 5 even instead of toughness 6, but it allows you to buy a regen. You can do the same with the Moon Dragon, but you can buy a regen on the Star Dragon anyway, and you lose out a lot. You go from weapon skill 7 to 6, which sure, that's the same as the Chaos Dragon, but you're only strength 6, so it feels like you really suffer there, and you go down from 6 to 5 attack. So I feel like the Moon Dragon is a step further down that I'd be willing to take in terms of sacrificing output, but you know, it's still a dragon. If you're taking 2 dragons and running them around together, and one of them's always going to be in a challenge, I guess saving some points for a Moon Dragon isn't the end of the world there. What's the split between princes and archmages riding them? Well, it's mostly princes, and then there's 7 archmages as well. This is not super surprising. I think a lot of people are going for the double prince build and just not worrying too much about having archmages at all. This is something that you can do. Or you can just go 1 Prince, 1 Archmage. Both have validity. Both are worth playing around with. There's also 14 units of Sisters of Avalon. Now, that can be taken in the Tracian Warhost, and it can be taken in the Grand Army. And almost all of the Sisters of Avalon have magic items. I think this is the big thing that 3 of the units are missing. I think it's 1 unit with 2 with no magic items, and then 1 with, 1 with a magic item and 1 without. But the Bow of the Seafarer is an incredible item, especially, if you're looking at a game where it's a shooting v shooting meta, you might want to try and kill enemy war machines. That's the sort of thing that can punk war machines at range. And also just being able to take Ruby Ring of Ruin, I think both of those are very solid. Boost the output of the unit quite a lot. So Sisters of Avalon, good output there, especially at the 11 with magic items. Finally, there's 3 lists with Dragon Princes. I really like Dragon Princes. I think their output is a little bit anemic. They are only strength 5, but they've got lances. So they've got, AP 2, armor being 1. They've got 2 attacks each. They feel like they need a little bit more juice, but if you're playing them in combination with other pressure, I really like them in terms of if you're wanting to crack an undead brick, for example, you probably will have a lot more success with a dragon prince and a couple of dragons than you would have done with just, a couple of dragons and some silver helms or something else along those lines. So worth putting in, and I hope to see them do well because they're one of my favourite units, and they look great as well. For High Elves, let's take a look at the first of the England list that we might take a peek at, and this is just, in my mind, the best version of the Trace list. I'm a huge fan of White Lions. I really like them in this list, but you've got to support them with a lot of character backup, and if you don't want to do that, if you want to go double dragon, in this case, James has gone for an Archmage on a Star Dragon, level 3, Seed of Rebirth, Talisman of Protection. Then we've got the Prince, and you can tweak around with the Prince's build, but this is what a lot of people have settled on, where you go Halberd, you go for the Armour of Calidor so you can get that second ward save, Seed of Rebirth, Opal Amulet, and that also just lets you take one of those 2-up ward saves, which in this meta, where you might have to face off against Bretonians, you might have to face off against cannons, having a single 2-up ward save, very valuable, really nice to have on your general. Trace and Woodsman, quite survivable. They are skirmish, they are only toughness 3, but they have got heavy armor and a lion cloak, so it's a 4-up save against shooting. They're -1 to be shot in general because of skirmish. They're -2 if they're touching terrain. You can keep them quite safe. You can put them behind terrain. If you're placing the Tracian Warhost, if you're playing the Tracian Warhost, you can bring, you will bring an extra wood to put down as well. So just a lot of flexibility there. Keeps you quite safe against shooting, and you can still bring 2 units Assist of Avalorn. One of them is going to take the Bow of the Seafarer. One of them is going to take the Ruby Ring of Ruin. This list is fantastic. I'd love to say that I had a lot of input. I did talk to James about his list, but he was pretty much there already, and we just talked about whether he liked this more than he liked the Grand Army version, and his decision was this one, and I agree with his decision. So, great High Elf list. If you're looking to play like a double dragon Trace list, this is probably the way that you should go. White Lions are nice, but they do need some support there. On to the last of the factions that we have widespread across the teams, and there are 10 out of 18 teams with Empire. And I think Empire are a little bit slept on in that there's only 6 teams that are taking Nuln, which is, in my mind, one of the best armies in the game at this time. I think it's something that hasn't been fully picked up on, and it's, in my mind, it's so good because it's a response to Cathay and the things that are good in the game being more shooting favoured. So 6 Nuln lists and 4 Grand Army lists, and what are they bringing between them? 15 units of Outriders. That's pretty good. 14 of them have got the Squintoffin's Marvelous Magnifier, I think it's called, 35-point magic item that lets them ignore range penalties. If you're taking Outriders in Nuln, they ignore the Ponderous, they ignore one of the penalties for moving and shooting. So at worst, they're only ever going to be hitting on 5s because they are going to be multiple shots and then, -1 for moving. Or realistically, you're going to be hitting on 4s with the Outriders. They can Vanguard turn 1. You can move up your characters into them as well. So Outriders going to do a bulk of the heavy listing in this sort of list. And across 6 lists, 15 units really shows how good they are. The fact that they're core as well, piece de la resistance. They are fantastic. 29 cannons as well. Not as many as we saw for, let's say, Cathay, but there's less, Empire players than Cathay. Cannons looking good. They're in pretty much all of the armies. I'm gonna, again, I didn't double check this, but I think they're in all of the Empire lists. So definitely something that you'd expect to see in an Empire mirror, alongside only a few people bringing Hal Blasters. They're good. I do like them. And especially if you're in Nuln, you can give them Gun Limbers, which means you can Vanguard them. So it gives you just a little bit more reach. You can deploy them on the line. You can Vanguard forwards 4 inches. Because you're playing Nuln, you're probably going to have relatively low drops. We'll see. You're more likely to go first. Or if your opponent deploys to try and shoot them, you can just Vanguard them backwards or, something like that. So really do like the Hellblasters there. Also, Steam Tanks. I personally think the Steam Tank is a little bit of a trap for this list, but 7 players have brought Steam Tanks. I'd like to see them, if you could bring 2 Steam Tanks, I think I'd be more on board with Steam Tanks in Empire lists, but right now I'm pretty out on them. However, it is a 4th cannon if you want to go down that list, even if it is a little bit worse of a cannon. And it's tanky. It can block enemy cannon shots. You can try and do some shenanigans to keep your cannon safe in the Cathay matchup. Finally, there are 4 lists with Road Wardens, 6 units total, and this is something that really makes Nuln sing. I know Dave, our Empire player, really values them highly. Just having the flexibility of them, being able to ambush them if needed, keep the drops low, really solid, and it makes the Nuln list sing. So good stuff there. Finally, there are 4 Griffins, 3 Imperial Griffins and 1 regular Griffin for saving points. this is like, there's advantages and disadvantages to these. I do like them, but in a list where, you know, maybe you don't have a lot of things that are worth shooting at with cannons, it does add a very juicy target. That said, if enemy cannons are shooting at the Griffin instead of your cannons, you're probably pretty happy about that. So that's that takes us to the end of Empire and the end of all of the factions that we can look at here. So let's take a quick look at one of the Empire lists, and then we'll go into the remaining 3 armies that have very low number of lists. For Empire and for Nuln specifically, I want to talk about Remy's list. Remy is one of my coaching students, but I'm not going to take credit for his list. He has refined and tweaked this and really just worked it to the bone, and I think he plays it really well. There's some interesting decisions in here that other people haven't gone with. So first of all, General Hans von Lohenhack. General Hans gives you +1 to go first. This is a gunline list. You really want to go first. Now, there are 6 drops in here, so you're not necessarily competing with Cathay. It puts it in a world where they get +1 for the amount of drops that they put down, and you get +1 from Hans, so it becomes a 50-50. But I think it just shores up your riskier matchups. It means that if you go into a, you know, if you're playing a null versus null matchup where you both have the same amount of drops, you're inherently much more likely to go first, and that makes it very risky for your opponent. So in a teams game, I really like this as a choice, and it's the only General Hans we've seen, so I do want to point that one out because I think it's a great shout that he's come up with. We've got triple cannon in here. He's really liking the Hellblasters with the gun numbers because you can vanguard them. This makes sense. It's not necessarily, I really like the Road Wardens that Dave has gone with for England, but I do see the value in the volley guns. You can deploy them on the line. You can vanguard forwards 4 inches. You can vanguard backwards 4 inches. It's very flexible. You can use them as you like. And 2 units of Outriders there is a good amount of shooting without having to put a 3rd character in there. Also, despite, you know, this is something that's more of a team's decision than a singles decision. The captains of the Empire, meaning that you're immune to psychology, you're not going to panic off the board. Really strong for this list. If you take casualties and you have to rely on leadership 7, that can go wrong. Whereas if if you're playing with the Witch Hunters, for example, yes, you get magic resist and potentially you get magical attacks depending how you load them out. On the flip side of that, you've got less reliability against psychology. So I think I really like this as a team's decision as opposed to a singles decision. We can't talk Skaven without talking about Anubis's list. Now, Anubis is one of, if not the best Skaven player in the world. I will give a quick shout out to Jack Allen as well, who's done very well with Skaven. But the 2 of them are head and shoulders above everyone else, and I'm someone who's taken Skaven to tournaments, and I don't mind saying that I'm not on the same level as them. This build that Anubis has been playing with the Storm Vermin Brick is basically, it's the same list that we're seeing across all 3 teams that are taking it. He's been playing it a lot and has popularized this style. Now, I like the choices he's gone with. He's got the classes, he's got a Shadow Magnet in there. That's -1 to be shot against ballistic skill shooting. We've got a Death Star. Let's protect it. Let's make it as hard as possible to get rid of. He's gone double assassin, 1 with the Weeping Blade, 1 with the Dragon Slaying Sword. What do you need to kill? Infantry, Weeping Blade. Dragons, you can try the Dragon Slaying Sword. I'm not 100% sure on this, but he's the Skaven master, so, you know, obviously there's value in it. I feel like the low number of attacks that assassins have worries me a little bit, but also it's a deterrent. If I want to charge you with a dragon, and I know there's an assassin in there with a Dragon Slaying Sword, I'm probably less likely to go for it because it's a gamble. So I do see value in it there. We've got a Chieftain with a Halberd just there to soak a challenge more than anything else, or get extra attacks in and then move to the back. We've got another Chieftain, this time the BSB with Skaven Brew to give Frenzy, which is a nice immune to psychology effect, as well as giving the extra attacks as needed. We've got a Warlord with the Fellblade, which is a lot of damage, but it can kill you, so just careful for that one. But then we've got 2 Clan Rats with the Warp Grinders. This gives them the ambush special rule, which means that they can come in the back lines, or they can stay safe until later in the game. I just really like this, and I don't think the other 2 Skaven players have gone with this, so it's a really nice adaptation there. Finally, Night Runners, skirmish infantry that can score, just a solid piece. I would like to see them a little bit bigger, because if you take 2 wounds on the squad, they stop scoring, but just generally a nice efficient piece that you can use, or you can use them for move blocking, you know, string them out, use them to block vision into your Storm Vermin, make it more difficult for your opponent to score points into you, which is really nice as well. If we're talking demons, let's have a look at Ukraine's list, and this is as full Khorne as you can get without trolling your team, and I like that. The Skull Cannons are really good in that they're a cannon that's a chariot. If you misfire, you just lose a wound, you don't risk blowing yourself up, which is nice. Obviously, they've got a ward save against non-magical attacks, so they're not immune to enemy shooting, but it's harder to kill them with your cannons than you might expect. The Bloodthirster with the Blood Flail and many arms, I don't personally love it, but if you are looking for as much violence in a small package as possible, the Bloodthirster is that. So, you know, it's gonna do a job for sure. The Blood Flail being D3 multiple wounds, as well as being, you know, strength 8, AP2, armor bane 1, I think off the top of my head. So it's a very punchy character, a lot of attacks. You get some impact hits in there as well. Really nice. Got the Demon Prince. This is the only thing that isn't Khorne, but having a wizard is pretty mandatory in my opinion. It's dark magic with twin heads for an extra spell known and power vortex for better dispelling. Relatively tanky because it's a Demon Prince, so it's got a 4 ward save. It's got fly 9, it can get around, it can hang around the Furies for protection against enemy shooting, which is nice. But most importantly, dark magic means that you can Battle Lust, you can cast Word of Pain on your opponent for minus strength and toughness, and you can cast the Tzeentch Demon signature spell as well, which debuffs their toughness as well. So you can just hit really hard with this list. Mostly the Furies, in my opinion. The thing that this list lacks is mostly AP, unfortunately, but it's got a decent amount of attacks, it's got a decent amount of strength, and you can supercharge that with the Battle Lust from the Frenzy and the Hatred that you get there, on top of the Word of Pain to debuff your enemy. Furies, incredible. Demons of Khorne giving them strength +1 strength on the charge. So they're strength 5, they've got 2 attacks because they've got Fury's charge built in. They're really, really solid. Fleshhounds, while they don't hit super hard in my opinion, they are pretty tanky. They've got 2 wounds each, as again they've got that ward save. They've got Vanguard, so they can get up into the you know, put pressure on enemies earlier rather than later. I see this list as being kind of scary into shooting lists, because just having an unmodifiable save is a pain in the backside for people to deal with, so it's strong along that axis there. Back to Denmark here for the Chaos Dwarf list. There's only 2 of them. I really like this list. This is a very difficult list for opponents to deal with. The Hobgoblins are so cheap. Even if you equip them with the shields and light armor, they're still really cheap. 132 points for 30 with a musician and a boss. Solid stuff there. 11 Infernal Guard, you've just got to take them. Giving them the Overseer's Sigil as well as the Death Mask. Getting some value out of them there. A couple of Iron Demons, which is, you know, toughness 7, a lot of wounds. Hellbound for the ward save against non-magical attacks. Having the Steam Cannonade, which is basically just a organ gun. So some good shooting out of the top of there. And, of course, we've got the Sorcerer Prophet, who's got a 4-up ward save from the Armor of Destiny and toughness 7, on top of, like, a pretty decent combat piece, the Bale Taurus. You don't love being in combat, but it's okay. You're hoping to get with Demonology, you know, Demonic Vessel, Demonic Vigor. If you get those, you can do some nice damage. If you don't get the Demonic Vessel, you struggle a little bit. But then also the Black Orc War Boss, toughness 6, 3-up armor save, 5-up ward from Talisman of Protection, 5-up regen from Trollhide Trousers, really beefy piece. Grizzly Trophy Rack as well. Just in there because it gives you -1 leadership in an aura of 6 inches against enemy units for, I think it's all leadership, but it might be specifically terror. Anyway, it's just a really tough nut to crack. You've got 4 pieces that are not going to fall over very easily. Toughness 7 or, you know, triple save. In some cases, double save, you know, with a 4-up ward save on there as well. The Black Orcs are there because you have to take them. Hobgoblins take a lot of killing to actually get through them. This is a really good points list, and I think it should play the missions quite well, and I'm interested to see how it does. You know, I think Chaos Dwarves are one of the armies that has definitely been slept on for WTC. I'm surprised that we don't have more than 2. Last but not least, we've got Switzerland, might be known as the country of neutrality. This is nothing like neutrality. This is violence all day, every day. The only Wood Elf list we have is Orion's Wild Hunt, which gives you a lot of access to more aggressive pieces. You've got Wild Riders in core, Shield, Wild Hunters, and Obsidian Lodestone for Magic Resist 1. Really nice. They've got Frenzy, they've got Furious Charge. 3 attacks each at Strength 5, AP2, Armor Bane 1. Just a solid offensive profile there. We've got a couple of great Glade Lords, both on dragons. You know, one of them's got regen and a ward save from the Mantle of Rebirth and Talisman of Protection. Resplendent of Luminescence gives you magical attacks as well, just in case you're worried about Ethereal. We've got the second Glade Lord, which is on, Dragon again. Armor of Destiny for that 4 ward save. Also, Aspect of the Boar gives you some impact hits and extra AP as well. Just nice, potentially you can kill the unit champion that was going to challenge you before you get challenged with those impact hits. But then also more Wild Riders in special, some Warhawk Riders, and a Great Eagle, and some Glade Riders here. So there are technically some frenzy blocking pieces, but mostly this list just wants to go full violence forwards, and I think this is a really solid way to play Wood Elves. I think it's pretty strong in teams. I'm actually surprised that we only have one Wood Elf list, but I think if we're seeing a Wood Elf list, this is pretty close to what I'd go with. I've been liking single dragon and then 2 or 3 other characters, but if you're going through the lens of just having to deal with specifically the problems you want to deal with, I think this is solid. I really like this list. That takes us to the end of this list. Hopefully it's been a fun glimpse into what people will be taking to the international stage in under a month's time. What are you surprised about? Is there anything that you're surprised to not see, or there's more focus there? Any list that you think maybe people are sleeping on that you think they should be bringing? Do let me know down in the comments, and see you in the next one. Thank you for watching. Thank you for getting to the end of the video. If you've reached this point and you haven't already, I would really appreciate a like, a comment, a subscription if you haven't done those things. It just helps me get seen by more people, boost me up in the algorithm, all of the stuff that the YouTubers do like to say. If you would like to support me in my goal to become a full-time YouTuber, I would absolutely appreciate that. You can become a member below. There are various perks to those, name at the end of the videos, all that good stuff, but it also unlocks some VIP areas in Discord if you become a Longbeard or Grey Knight tier supporter. Those VIP sections are the only parts that are locked away in Discord. You don't have to be a member to join the Discord. I'd recommend that you should. We've got about 450, 500 people on there. It's a great place for discussion, a lot of fun. I do try and chime in as much as possible. And it's also where the Fix My List show lists are put, and also if you are one of the Grey Knight or Longbeard tier supporters, where you participate in choosing which list I play in the monthly Pick My List series.